Committee. Did I get that right? Thank
Mhm.
you. In order to look about protecting certain open spaces. And as was just alluded to in the prior presentation, Saratoga County is the fastest growing county in all of New York State. Malta is one of the fastest growing towns in all of New York State. That growth is really exciting. And with it, you want to maintain a certain balance for your population. So one of the things that we're looking into. No worries. Is conservation of farmland in the town of Malta. We've met with several landowners. Some of them, I'm not going to mention the others here, but we have been working with Peter Brooks, who is the owner of Boulder Brook Farm. Boulder Brook Farm is a Christmas tree farm located on Nelson Avenue Extension up in the northern part of town, surrounded by a good bit of farmland. There's a good bit of farmland in that stretch up there. The property is just shy of 26 acres. It features fantastic soils for farming. 91% of the property is high quality productive soils, prime soils, or soils of statewide importance. That's what we're looking for when we go to conserve farmland. Christmas trees, I mentioned. In addition, bees are raised and honey is harvested on the site. There are substantial woods on the property, as well as two small tributaries that go into Drummond Creek. So water quality is another benefit that would be coming from this conservation project. From our research, preservation of this farmland is in line with the Town of Malta Comprehensive Plan, the Town of Malta Agricultural Enhancement Study. It has been identified as a priority by the Malta Oats Committee. And furthermore, I'd say it's in line with the Saratoga County Agriculture and Farmland Protection Plan, the Saratoga County Green Infrastructure Plan, and the New York State Open Space Plan, which has prioritized preservation of all farmland in Saratoga County. Saratoga Plan is proposing a purchase of development rights project to conserve the Boulder Brook Farm. This would prohibit further subdivision, prohibit further development. It would keep the land and the high quality agricultural soils forever available for farming. And in this proposal, Saratoga Plan would manage the project. We would hold the conservation easement in perpetuity, and we would enforce those conservation requirements that would be within the conservation easement in perpetuity. Today, we're asking the Town of Malta for two actions. One of these is support of an application by Saratoga Plan to Saratoga County's Farmland Protection and Open Space Grant Program. We plan to apply for $100,000 from the Saratoga County program. We are seeking an endorsement from the Town of Malta for that application and agreement that from the Town of Malta to act as a fiscal conduit, as you have in past projects that we've worked on in a similar vein. The second item we're asking for is direct financial support from the Town of Malta in the amount of $100,000 to also help fund this project. And I would be happy to answer any questions or talk further about it.
Thank you very much, Michael. Very interesting, and the PDR program is something that we've been anxious to keep up going. We started it a little while ago with the purchase of one, and so we're looking forward to it. I think this particular proposal is terrific because Plan would be putting in part of the money after Malta's contribution of 100,000. We'd still have money in the program because we're looking at some other properties, and I know Miles Cornthwaite is here. We're looking at his property, et cetera. So, yeah, I support this plan. I think it's a great idea. I don't know if anybody else on the board has any questions.
I actually have a couple of comments and a question. I certainly support the plan. It is. When I turn it on, we all set now. Okay. When I, I'm a member of the comp plan committee. That is an area that from the very beginning, the 2000 plan and what we will propose in the new update, that's certainly an area where we would like to keep that rural and it's prime for purchasing and development rights. So in that regard, and I certainly support it. My question is though, our process generally is to get an appraisal, and are we bypassing that step?
Right.
This?
There's one of two ways you can go. You could go with an estimated value, then you get an appraisal as part of the project, or you can oftentimes the landowner really wants to know what they're looking at. They want that appraisal up front. In this case, the landowner, Peter Brooks, who is here tonight, was comfortable with the estimate that we had. So we're going in with that. An
And-
appraisal will be done as part of the project. And I would note in the end, that appraisal, the appraised value of the development rights could be higher or lower than expected. If it were substantially lower, we might not need the full amount of funding, but we certainly expect that we do.
So if the appraisal comes in that it's substantially lower,
I
then the
wouldn't-
funding would be lower.
Right, but that's lower than we expect.
Okay.
I'm not trying to set that expectation. I'm
Right.
saying that you go in with some uncertainty and then that appraisal as part of the
Right.
project sets that.
But your best, experienced opinion is that this $200,000 is probably lower than what the appraisal will come in.
Yes,
So
Yes.
fair price. And-
yes. And that's based on other appraisals that we've had around Saratoga County, some dated appraisal that we've had in the town of Malta, that the town is also familiar with. I suppose I would also say I'm hopeful or optimistic that as we get an appraisal or two done, it will shed light on what the value of other PDR projects in the town would be with current estimates. So we have met with Mr. Cornthwaite as well and toward his property. And we're hoping to work towards getting that type of appraisal done. And as you know, we've also engaged with Mr. Knipp on his farmland as well. So a lot of action going on that we're responding to. This is the
Yeah.
first one that's ripened.
Well, this is exciting. It's something I think we've all wanted to move forward with these types of projects and they've kind of been stymied. So thank you to the Oats Committee for actually moving it forward. Thanks to Mr. Brooks for being willing and it's very exciting. Thank you.
I'd just like to add that it's great to have a partner because when we were looking at these, there are a lot of places in our town that offer aesthetic qualities that are significant contributions to our identity. And with the development pressure, that we've seen over the last 10 years, the value of them has become of increased concern. And as we've tried to at the town level figure out how to move forward, it's been kind of intimidating when you consider what the development rights for all of these properties really are. It's big. And it's daunting to sit and look at that big a value, realizing you have nowhere near the resources to be able to acquire those development rights. So it's great to have a partner. I'm not sure how much by way of money the sort of a plan is in a position to provide in partnership with the town, but I hope it's a lot because we'll need a lot. I realize there's state participate. I don't know what the status is. It seems like it's cyclical. But hopefully we'll be able to in partnership line some state funding up as well. One thing that's again intimidating and it's maybe the hardest part of looking at PDR is how you prioritize, because many of these properties, it's hard to say that one is necessarily a bigger contributor than the next in terms of our self identity. How do you guys go about? I mean, why is the Brooks property such a high priority on your list at this point?
It's a great question. So I first want to point out, this is only possible with some generosity from the landowner. So they are contributing to the project as well. Saratoga Plan is not necessarily contributing a lot of direct financial resources. I just want that to be clear. We're pairing the generosity of the landowner with Saratoga County funding with town funding.
So it would be a contribution of the value. Is that
A portion of the value would be contributed by Mr. Brooks. Yes.
Donation.
Yes.
That is very generous.
And then I suppose to answer the second part of the question, well, and we are bringing our resources free of charge to partner with the Oats Committee and go out and talk to landowners and do that type of consultation up front. So I do want to say Saratoga Plan is contributing, but when it comes to the transaction for the PDR, that's not necessarily going to be cash from Saratoga Plan's pocket. we will seek out the grants and bring those in. So we're pretty good at seeking out such grants and bringing those in. As you mentioned, the state program and so forth. When it comes to prioritizing, there's a lot of different ways you can think about that, and it might go through different categories. There are certain quantifiable characteristics of land, of natural resources, et cetera. So I mentioned the quality of the soils. You could look at a given parcel of farmland and say, this one has more prime farmland than that one, therefore it's better. But this one might be bigger and more contiguous with other farmland, so that might make that better. So there's a bit of subjectivity that comes in when you start looking at all those factors. You certainly can generally categorize, these are better, these are pretty good, these are so-so for a given category, whether it's natural habitat, whether it's farmland, you get the idea. We have a lot of technical information about that. Our executive director, Maria Trabka, and myself met with Supervisor O'Connor to go over some of those things a couple of years ago. So I'd be happy to share that with you in a more detailed format. One of the ways that we ultimately prioritize which project will move forward comes down to which landowner is ready to transact. So when a landowner has wrapped their head around the legal ins and outs and the repercussions, the commitment that they're making, when they've wrapped their heads around the financial commitment, that's why sometimes folks want to get that appraisal beforehand, right? Totally legitimate and reasonable. And so when that landowner is ready to transact, that's when we've really decided that a project should go forward. I can tell you, we do get approached by landowners with an interest in conserving a piece of property, and a number of times we determine that either it's really not that threatened or it doesn't have significant conservation values, and we're not too interested in taking that forward. Usually it has to do with scale, with location, what have you. Does that help answer your question? Yeah, there's no perfect science to it.
It's, as I see it over the next 5 years, if the Global Foundries project goes ahead as it has been announced, then this, has to be a higher priority for the town of Malta, because even without it, demand for residential construction, is so acute in Saratoga County and in this area that we really need to be more focused and make this a higher priority. Lest we'll lose, I think, what most people view as what makes Malta Malta.
We're certainly happy to partner with the town on that.
Kevin, how much money do we have in our fund for
So
PDRs?
500,000, 5.5 million.
Okay. All right, well, good, thank you.
Michael, I'd just like to thank you very much for the presentation tonight. Thank you very much for jumping on board with us when we approached you a little over a year ago. I know myself, Oates Committee, we made this a priority to resurrect, and I think that's really a proper word, resurrect the PDR program. Previous Parks and Rec Director Audrey Ball did extensive work. I mean, she did a lot of work on the PDR program. Unfortunately, over the years, it never really lifted off the tarmac, other than Bowman Orchard, which you folks, Saratoga Plan, initiated that as well. Aside from that, we've been a little bit behind, I think, and I thank you for the advice that you've given me, myself, the rest of the committee. It's been really, really appreciated. And thank you again for helping us along with this, and look forward to even working with you even more as we see hopefully more PDRs come down the chute.
Great.
So thank
You're
you very
welcome.
much.
I hope so.
Hopefully this plays out a little easier than the Bowman Orchards one did, because that kind of dragged on for a while.
But yes,
Absolutely. Thanks, Mark. And thank you, Michael. I think the entire board is looking forward to this terrific project. Thank you very much.
thank you.
And thanks, Mr. Brooks.
I should clarify, the county application is due August 6th. So
Yes.
we're looking for that deadline. Thank you.
So do we have to take action?
No, it's August 6th, I think I have the
Yes, it is
Oh, it
August
says
6th.
August 6th. So
we'll
we're
take
going to take action on the
next-
second.
On the second, okay.
That's all right. We'll take action on the second, Michael, right? That's fun. Good for you. Okay.
I'll remind him, Michael.
Mm.
Okay, next.
Able to turn up the lights now, the presentations are over.
I think we have one light that's not on over there. I think that one's over there. There we go.
Look at those, all those smiling faces out there, Darren.
Absolutely.
All I see is Roger.
And he's not smiling. Oh, there it is.
Okay, we have two items on for action tonight. The first one is more or less a housekeeping item. We've been talking about this for a while, and this relates to the ambulance district. And this proposed resolution will simply serve to make sure that we meet the deadlines and act within the window required by Board of Elections so that we can get this issue on the ballot for November 2nd for the electorate of Malta to vote on.
So moved.
Second.
Discussion. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Carried. The next item on the agenda is to create a part-time clerk in our Parks and Rec Department. As we're ramping up, as COVID diminishes, we need to increase the staffing over there a little bit. So this resolution would create a part-time clerk position.
So moved.
Second.
Discussion? All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Carried. Okay. Would anyone on the town board like to make an announcement or have any questions?
I actually have a
Go
couple of
ahead,
things.
Cynthia.
Um,
Ladies first.
A couple of things. First of all, I attended the SEDC presentation. It was one of their summits on transportation mitigation. I mostly signed up for it because I saw a familiar name on the panel. It was Floria Heisinger, our part of our planning staff, and Don Adams. They were the two presenters. I was surprised to see that the entire presentation was actually about all the stuff that Malta's done right over the years and why we are the measures that we've taken for the past probably 15 or 20 years that make the traffic mitigation in Malta work. So it was really interesting. I don't know if you can watch the recording of it. It was recorded. It was a Zoom meeting. So tell Floria, thank you. She did a nice job. Second, everybody's excited. I'm sorry Tim's not here to hear this. We're having a meeting of the comp plan committee to go over the final draft on Wednesday. So hopefully soon we'll actually have something before the town board. So,
Fantastic. Looking forward to that. Thank you, Cynthia. Any other board members?
Yes. More importantly, the Ugly Rooster is now open. So if you get a chance, stop down to the Ugly Rooster, give those folks a try. Love to get another business up and going and successful in town. I was down there with my wife opening day and I saw Cynthia, you were there at one point too.
oh yeah, we were some of the first served in the Ugly Rooster. So
I
was
think
there,
we were
like,
first, you were second, I think.
we got there 7:15. So were you there at the same time and you just snubbed me?
No, I don't get up early, you know that. So, but it was good and really give them a try and support local. It helps us all. Second of all, on a more serious note, it's been brought to my attention by a few neighbors in the Luther Forest, Ermine Lair neighborhood, actually. The crosswalk that we have that leads into the park across Plains Road. People have asked for more attention in the way of, I guess it's called an RRFB. Woody, if you could help me out with that, I think rapidly rectangular, rotating flashing beacon, something. And we've talked about these before at other meetings, and I think, Darren, you're probably aware of what I'm talking about. But nonetheless, I do believe that is something that warrants looking into. I don't know, Kevin, if we have any grants existing right now that maybe that could fall under. If so, I mean, we can talk about it and maybe get something moving on there. I think that it is necessary. We have children crossing there quite often. And let's face it, not everyone does a speed limit. So something to get their attention and not be distracted, I think would be very helpful.
We've talked about that very crosswalk before. Did we just drop the ball on it? I mean, what do those things cost? The flashing
Around
beacons?
10,000 from what I gather.
And it's a county road. Can we just do that?
I thought Woody.
Woody, you could probably shed some light on this.
One of
Mhm. I believe it is. I did speak with Ian. He was the one that actually, he basically spearheaded that, the grant application. And it told me that unfortunately that it did not go through it because of what you said, those reasons. But nonetheless, we talked about, we've seen it every day out on the road, distracted drivers in one way or another, whether it's phones or whatever, that coupled with speed. And if there's just something we can do to get people's attention, and I think that those RFFBs, that's pretty much what the doctor ordered, and they do work well. So I certainly would hope that we could look into that a little bit further and maybe get moving on that one.
Kevin, you'll be shocked to hear me ask you about funding availability. I gather that there isn't anything that we currently have that would qualify for this type of expenditure. Town funds or grant funds.
I'm not aware of any grant funds. And
Okay.
I was going to some processes of government service. Find out. I was going to look in what is still left in the Malta Community Park capital project. There might be still some dollars left from the last phase we did there. That could be probably transfer that over. Utilize for a project of this kind. But my recollection, the bid on that project came in under budget.
You can't hear Alyssa shaking her head yes back there. So, maybe at our August meeting, we could get an update from Kevin. And if not, perhaps it's something for next year's budget to put in the mix.
I certainly think so. I agree. And thank you, Mark and John. I think it's an important point. And, you know, Cynthia is saying, yeah, we've talked about this before. We got a input from one of the residents talking about the rapid beacons and complaining that they were yellow. We completely agree with her. You know, the color isn't kind of, you know, obvious enough to the motorists. Sometimes we'd rather have them be blue or red or something. But we can't. So they are yellow and they're going to have to stay yellow until they change that rule. But still, they do a great job. So yeah, I definitely think it's a project worth looking into. Any other comments from town board? Department heads. I know we have emails and reports and everything, but does anyone have any additional comments?
How's camp going, Alyssa? No outbreaks of COVID and everybody's.
We were all waiting with open arms for the kids to come down for candy the other day, but then it started to rain and they had to run back to the community center. So we were disappointed. Okay, any comments from town residents on any item? Kathy?
You understand it was
Happy
Kathy's birthday
Yes,
recently?
it is.
And I believe she was serenaded by Sam the Bugler at the track.
Yes, I was. Yeah, that was on my bucket list and he did that for me. So that was great.
It was
Yeah.
cute. It was
I'm
very cute.
18 with 52 years of experience at it. So, the Malta seniors met here in July and it was really great. We actually liked this area. It was very comfy and cozy. We had 9 new members that day and they all got up and spoke about themselves. We probably had over a dozen new members and maybe 2 were not from Malta. So I'm very proud of that word of mouth is getting to our Malta residents. So if you live in Malta or in surrounding community and you haven't joined, You're missing out. You're missing out. So we will be here in August, and our senior nutritionist will be here. Diane Witten will be talking about senior nutrition. And tomorrow, we're all going to Lake George a day late to celebrate my birthday. Only me. Thank you, guys.
Today is your birthday?
Today is my
Oh,
birthday.
happy birthday,
Yeah, thank
Kathy.
you.
Terrific.
Kathy, I would just pass along that I recently, I think it was over the weekend, I met an individual down at Avondale who had been widowed. I don't know if it was 5 or 6 years ago, who talked very enthusiastically and gratefully about how you had reached out to him and brought him into your senior group, and what a important part of his life it's been.
Oh, great. I
Um,
love hearing
so,
that. I love hearing
Yeah,
that.
just know that,
Thanks.
you know, the folks that you brought in appreciate your efforts.
Thank you very much. Well, I know my mom and sister up there saying, go girl, so it's good.
Thank you, Kathy. Any other comments, questions from town residents? Yes, Peter.
Yes, I'm Peter Klotz, past planning board chairman, past board member. Number of years ago, some of us spent many hours over months and even years studying the wisdom of trading off a few thousand housing units for a world-class higher tech chip fab plant. We studied the impacts of everything from the visual impacts of high capacity electrical wires and exhaust stacks to the way that various exhausts would be emitted from those stacks. We studied secondary and even tertiary impacts of so many construction workers and so many higher paid tech workers and families on our area. And we studied traffic, projecting scenarios for short-term and long-term capacities and impacts. Since the timeline for such plants and projects can be so unpredictable, we measured time and impacts by trip generation. Traffic was such an important common concern. Construction workers, factory workers, research workers, startup workers, long-term workers, the Round Lake bypass, exit 11A, the Stonebreak Road access, the Route 67 entrance, Cold Springs Road. The list goes on. At the end of the day, it was determined that we had mitigated all we could, and we still, even after that, were able to negotiate several more millions of dollars for the Global Foundries Malta Foundation and visual impacts along Route 9. By the end, I think even many who were opposed to a factory in the forest became at least less adverse. After all we went through to make Global Foundries a reality, I would not want to see its ongoing plan for growth jeopardized by a warehouse in the woods. Such a project promises traffic as its chief feature and threatens the key concern voiced by so many in the area. Such a project needs its own interstate access and needs to keep away from key residential and high-density commercial areas and developments. So I hope the town board looks long and hard at what little good seems promised by this project and what greater long planned for growth and good will be at risk or maybe even lost, including the direct and indirect consumption of resources such as space and traffic and other things and resources that are earmarked now for Global Foundries and related projects.
Thank you, Peter. Appreciate that. Any other comments, questions from town residents? Yes, Matt.
Jay, the Scanal project is gonna go now, or do you want to wait till you get to that?
I mean, now is fine because we're not, I mean, otherwise it won't be till the end of the meeting. So
Here?
that has the microphone. Oh, this has a microphone too, wherever you want.
Mr. Members of the town board, my name is Matthew Jones. I'm a lawyer. I practice with Jones Sea in Saratoga Springs. And I represent Global Foundries. I'm here this evening in connection with the pending application of Scanal, which former chairman Klotz just and former town member, town board member Klotz just talked about. And this specifically relates to a letter that you received from Scanal's counsel, my colleague Teresa Baker, dated July 6th.
in which I found agreement with Teresa on at least one portion of her letter, that being in the first paragraph, in which we agree that over the last 15 years, but for Global Foundries, there's been no other development in LFTC, and we all know that. In fairness to Teresa, her letter was written on July 6th, and as you all know, and the town knows, and New York State knows, Global Foundries, through its CEO, Tom Caulfield, announced the commitment to construct Fab 8.2. So hopefully very soon, work on that will begin. In this particular case, unlike when I appeared before you in 2008, in 2013, and in 2015, on those three PDD amendments, it's anticipated that this will be a matter for the planning boards of both Malta and Stillwater, but without the regulatory involvement, at least of the town board of the town of Malta or the town board of the town of Stillwater. I made 2 appearances before the planning board in opposition to the application that Skanel presented. And Mark suffered through at least one of those. I don't know about the second one, but they were long meetings involved. And during those 2 meetings, I presented letters to the town board, to the planning board, and made arguments principally on the notion of compliance with a comprehensive plan, which this board knows is a threshold issue for any application for zoning relief. Those letters, copies of which I gave to Jennifer tonight for the town board. And so I'm going to not even summarize that. I'm going to make 2 points for those and then follow it up with 1 request. In support of Skanel's claim that they were in compliance with the PDD, you'll recall seeing the application that they submitted to you, I think in December or January, in which in the box checked, is the PDD in general compliance with a comprehensive master plan? They checked the box, yes. And when the next line for an explanation, the explanation that Skanel gave was the application proposes to amend the existing PDD, which seems to me an insufficient rationale or explanation as to how the proposed amendments would be in compliance with the comprehensive plan. Council then wrote to the planning board to provide what she deemed as 3 rationales, separate rationales for the compliance issue, essentially arguing that your comprehensive plan, the 2004 document, described a goal of providing opportunities for Malta residents to live and work in the town of Malta, that the economic development for the specific areas in the town is a goal which can be fulfilled because of this project, and the strengthening of the economy of the town by encouraging growth and broad economic base, again, was fulfilled by the zoning amendments, which would allow for the warehouses that Skanel proposes to build. Those generalized statements are insufficient on their face. What council neglected to do was to reference that area of the comprehensive plan that deals specifically with Luther Forest. And the reason she did not draw from that area is that area, the Luther Forest, section 5 in the comprehensive plan, does not provide support for a warehouse district in LFTC. It was conceived and constructed as a nanotechnology semiconductor manufacturing facility, and that's its mission. It is not a warehouse district, and nor does the comprehensive plan contemplate that. I think I'll surmise that in recognition of the absence of specific language in the comprehensive plan to support the amendments, council has turned to the comprehensive plan committee, and on the suggestion that there is language in draft form from that committee which supports what she claims is the rationale for Skanel under the comprehensive plan. And as Mr. Supervisor, as you know, that may or may not be a recommendation that is forthcoming. It is certainly not evidence now for the town board to consider and making a determination as consistency with the comprehensive plan. It is at this stage, no more than a potential committee recommendation. So those are the comments which are laid out at considerably greater length in the letters. I said 2 points and one request. You've got a very talented planning staff and council and outside council and consultants, Chazen, that work in this day in, day out. I know all of those folks and they are very talented. I would urge you to seek the benefit of their counsel on the question of the threshold question of the comprehensive plan and whether or not it's consistent. In our view, if it is inconsistent with the comprehensive plan, that will end the inquiry. Unless the town board, obviously, as it has the prerogative to do, were to amend the comprehensive plan on its own. But other than that, I think you ought to have the benefit. I think the case is clear and convincing that it is not, and that would end it. From our standpoint on the Global Foundry side, this is a tremendously complex application that we're about to make. It's a complex industry, highly regulated by not only the towns, and there'll be county involvement and state involvement and federal oversight. So it is a difficult one. To add a layer on top of us to compete for the resources that we need within LFTC is something that I think is unnecessary, unwise, and inconsistent with a successful process that you have had getting Fab 8 there and now on the verge of 8.2 with the commitment from its CEO. I thank you for the opportunity.
Thank you very much, Matt. Any questions for Matt? Thank you very much, Matt.
Thank you, Matt.
Any other comments, questions? Yes. Is that you, Tom? Tom?
We're not used to seeing you without an RV as a backdrop.
I just want to take up 2 minutes. You know, the Global Foundries expansion is very exciting. There's no question about that. But it's not in the Luther Forest Technology Campus. It's in the campus next door. And our proposed PDD changes are not to create a warehouse district, but to have the ability to build warehouses in the park as part of the tools that we use to sell the park. I know at the planning board meeting, which I attended one of them, and I unfortunately brought the wrong day in my calendar for the second one, but we spend a lot of time at Luther Forest Technology Campus saying no to people because it's not the right thing in the park, in the campus. It's not providing the right kind of jobs. But, and we've had people use a lot of our valuable time up and do nothing. Stop returning our calls, choose to do something in Virginia, Oklahoma, Western New York. And so we've been working very hard on this for 12 years. And Scannell is the first person who's had success in a broad range of type uses that has continued the process. So we're not trying to create a warehouse district. We're trying to permit warehousing as part of things people do in that area. You know, Global Foundries has a warehouse in the tech park that we couldn't have built in our park that they use for they rent some space from a local businessman. So, you know, today we sent somebody a note saying, you know, we really appreciate the time you spent. And we know you've been into the town, but you're a non-starter. We don't want to have that type of business in the park, in the campus, and you're going to have to look somewhere else. So we don't take this very lightly. We just hope that you'll give us a chance and know that we've been working very, very hard on this. I've been on the board for 12 years, and we spent a lot of time with Prosperity Partnership, a lot of time with SEDC, a lot of time with people that wanted to bring business to New York. And some of them we were very excited about, but we never got a second date. I must have been a bad kisser or something. I don't know what the problem was, but it didn't work out for us. And, as Senator Bruno used to say to me, Saratoga is one of 62 counties in the state of New York. The state of New York can't do everything for Saratoga County. We have to worry about other people. And so when those people get in the higher level down in Albany, we fall off the list because other counties need help. And they're in a position to help those other counties. So I've talked too long. I appreciate all the volunteers and hard work that you do. And if anybody has any questions, always can call me.
Thank you very much, Tom. Appreciate that. Any questions for Tom?
Just one statement. The one thing that I'm not sure everybody fully appreciates is Tom is brilliant, except for one thing. He doesn't know when to quit being on the board of the Luther Forest Tech Campus Corporation. Tom has, despite circumstances, the state of New York cutting off funding, saying they wouldn't release their mortgage, just every possible adversity that could confront his not-for-profit corporation, he's pretty well confronted it, and yet he's stuck with it, for which he, deserves credit that he'll never fully receive. If my feelings about this were based upon my respect for Tom, I would support Skanal, but they're not. I mean, Tom, you appreciate at the end of the day, I'm going to do what I think is right for my
Without a doubt.
town. Thank you.
No, thank you.
Thanks, John. Anyone else? Okay, thanks very much, Tom. Appreciate it. Any other comments from town residents? Yes.
Hi, my name's Brian Plant. I live in Avondale, over on Candlewood Drive. I just wanted to attend the meeting because I knew there was discussions going on about Skinell. I just want to, from a resident's perspective over there in Avondale, and I know the majority of my neighbors feel the same way as I do. My house butts up against the Forever Wild and then the Northway. As is, we hear the Northway, but I chose to raise my family here, and we've been here now 15 years and love the area, love the neighborhood, and love the town. And so I believe in good development for the town that benefits the town, but certainly not at the cost of the residents and the people who are raising their families here or who have raised their families here. And certainly some of the discussions about exit 11A would negatively impact my neighborhood, my family, my neighbors, because it would, some of the proposed drawings I saw puts that pretty close to my backyard. And so that would certainly have a negative impact upon Avondale and the families that live over there. And certainly, upon my family. So I just wanted to at least voice my opinion so that could be taken into consideration. What the proposed exit would do if that came to fruition.
Thank you, Brian. I appreciate that. And yes, we've heard from other residents in that neighborhood with the same concerns as you have, and we'll certainly consider that as we move forward. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Anyone else? Yes, sir.
Good afternoon. Thank you for serving as a town board. You guys do a lot of great work. My name is Clifton Van Gilder. I am the treasurer, newly appointed treasurer of the High Point Homeowners Association. And we've noticed that there's markings on the sidewalks in High Point. And not sure if those are associated with the improvements or repairs that are going to happen. So I'm asking a question, not making a comment.
I believe they are.
They are.
Am I wrong, Roger?
We did for some white paint for, the big tickets for 811.
Yeah.
For the stumps, but I don't know if anybody else has been over there. We marked basically the road where we need to pick up.
Yeah, there's also marks on the sidewalk along Rock Rose Way in front of the senior center, down by the gazebo. Nothing to do with the town. Okay. I just got a note from Jim Poitras, who's the new president. And the concern is, we just like to be involved and understand the improvements before they happen. I'm an engineer. I understand a lot about the ADA requirements. And there's going to be some work required to meet that. And if we could just understand before the shovels come out to how the town plans to make everything comply with the ADA, that's our request.
Sure, I understand that. And yeah, we were talking about that today.
Great.
And I've communicated with Jim. Evolution, Roger's going to do some of the work as his team has already been doing. And then Evolution is going to come in with the repair work, I think. So yeah, when we hear a schedule, we'll definitely try to get in touch with you and, run things by
Wonderful.
him.
And going to Jim is fine. He's just down in Florida right now with his dad. So
Okay.
You can contact me as well. But
Okay, can you send me an email with your contact
Sure.
information? I probably already have it, but
I
just in
think you
case.
do based
Okay.
on the last
Yeah.
meetings associated with the sidewalks.
Okay, got it.
Okay,
Okay.
thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else? Okay, thanks. We'll move on to the next item on our agenda, which talks about what we might have in front of us a week from tonight. The first item, the presentation on the State Farm PDD, they will not be ready for the presentation next week, so we'll take that off and maybe have the presentation at the end of August or beginning of September. The next item on the agenda is the Hazardous Waste Day. What we've done in the past is latched on to Clifton Parks project and allowed our residents to, for a fee, take part in that hazardous waste. That's going to happen on September 25th. And we'll have to have a resolution that sets the fee and, enables us to take part in that hazardous waste disposal. The next one is to hopefully award the Old Post Road project. And we're pretty much ready to move forward with that, I think. That's putting a new turn lane in, going on to Route 9 from Old Post to improve the traffic flow at that intersection, which we've needed for a long time. And I think, Kevin, we have our low bidder in, right?
Yes.
We're establishing the right of way and we've, come to an agreement basically with the landowner. So we're in pretty good shape there.
Yeah, the low bid was from Reifenberg Construction for $333,115. The proposed resolution would be to accept the bid. Also amend the contract of Great Manning Engineering to perform the construction inspection services as that work is ongoing. They will be coordinating with Roger as work happens. And I believe we're in the final stages of, we had a prior agreement for the right of way and we're just finalizing the closing on that. So the resolution would be award the bid at the August 2nd meeting, and then we'll proceed to getting all the necessary contract documents in line and get this project moving.
How are we doing on budget?
The budget, we will be increasing the budget by $65,000. The majority of that increase is the estimate prepared by the engineer. There's been increases in some of the components for traffic signals. Okay, as far as from manufacturing, just like everything else in the economy today, everything seems to be going up. And also their estimate relating to protection of traffic. They provided their estimate was about $50,000 lower. That number there is a difficult, they've tried, I said, that's gonna be I need an explanation from you guys. Why is your number $50,000 lower than the two bidders? And they've said time and time again, that is the one area when they go for a bid that they've analyzed bids, past bid history, taken averages, and they provide the best knowledge they have what the number might be. But they are dealing with the New York State Route 9. And that's a particularly sensitive area up there with the way that interchange flows into Old Post Road. So protection of traffic is going to be a concern.
What's the total budget amount within their bid for that protection of traffic component?
Reifenberg's estimate was $105,000.
So that's almost a third of the
Yeah.
total cost to construct this traffic protection.
Yep. The two bids, did you see the bid summaries? We got two bidders that did respond. Both bids, Callahan Industries was at $357,791. They're both in the same range. And Callahan's estimate for work zone safety was roughly $70,000. So those are,
Who would have thought?
I'm not that surprised based on what I know about that intersection.
Yeah.
So,
And the construction period, the schedule to complete it is how long?
they are to be completed. We gave them a break on the signal installation. I think they have signal installation through November, I believe it was. But they had to have pavement maybe buttoned up by October 31st. It's a relatively short
Yeah.
duration contract, but it's really, in the scheme of things, for those types of contractors, it's not a major project.
Thank you.
Thanks, Kevin. Okay, it'll be nice to get that underway. Next item on the agenda is a possible application for a Transportation Alternatives Program grant. That's an 80% grant, and the idea was to possibly put in a sidewalk from Stone Break down to Tadeo, so it could service the people living at Malta Gardens and extend our sort of pedestrian-friendly core area. So that's an idea that came up, and we're just raising it tonight for, some discussion to see, how it sits with the board.
I think that's important. I mean, you see so many people walking from Malta Gardens to, some of them might know they work at Price Chopper, I see them in their jobs, and it's dangerous. So it'd be a nice connection to a lower income housing development in town that I think is important. So it's 80%?
Yes.
So they pay 80, we pay 20?
Yep.
And what do we anticipate the cost of the project to possibly be?
Well, this grant, they will only award projects of $500,000 or more. Okay, so you're at 20% of that, or $100,000 would be your minimum commitment. We're gonna have to engage our town engineer to, prepare an estimate that is needed, because we're dealing with probably closing off some drainage again relating to Route 9, which is the New York State right away. We're also got to figure out how much right of way they do have there to see if we can fit the sidewalk within the right of way. We were very successful in our complete street project that we didn't have to acquire any right of way.
We talking about just one side of the street or both sides of the street?
Well, we would start with the west side.
Right.
Okay, if the west side gets us, to the project minimum of $500,000, we would think we're gonna stop there, and we're provided at least connectivity on one side of the street. But that's entirely up to the board as far as the total size of the project. As far as, it's a candidate, it's eligible. These grants are very competitive. Okay, we've submitted other grant applications on sidewalks and have not been successful. We've submitted transportation projects for road improvements on East Line Road and Route 67, which we thought were probably more likely to happen, and we're unsuccessful. So the cost to engage Jason to do the application for us, I asked them for a ballpark estimate last week, and they gave me an estimate around $4,000 to do the application. So timing is, we would have to engage Jason at the next meeting, or just to move that forward, because there's a preliminary application that New York State DOT would like to see by, I think it's the third week of August. They give you some judgment as how you're proceeding with your application, how to improve it, et cetera. And then it's the final applications due like the third week of September.
I'm sorry.
And Chazen says they can complete the estimate in that timeline of the grant application?
They didn't tell me they were not
Okay.
capable of doing so. So
I felt myself being supportive until I heard 500,000. Then my support was $500,000 for sidewalks.
yeah,
For that small stretch of, is to me, like I said, my enthusiasm, started to tail off. I mean, there's other parts of town, down off Raylinsky Road in particular, and down off Chango. I mean, those areas of town have just as many people who want to try and get into, a commercial area. So I'm, to be honest with you, I would, sitting here today, I wouldn't support a $500,000 sidewalk project as you've described it.
Kevin, could this be like coupled with other things like, we talked about this before, and I'd be surprised if this project came up to 500,000, but who knows?
Yeah.
I mean, can we combine the rapid flashing beacons at Plains or a crossing up here on 9? I mean, can we combine these three, or?
I don't know if you're gonna get Plains Road into it. It's gonna have to, you might be able to do some flashing beacons in the Route 9 corridor, maybe at Stone Break. Okay, that's in the immediate vicinity of it.
Yeah.
It might push to get it all the way up to Route 9 and Dunning Street, might be pushing the application, but we could definitely look into that. I understand the concerns about the dollar amount, I don't have an estimate of what it is to construct one side right now. I just don't have it. I had to attend a webinar last week just to be able to submit an application. You had to attend a 2-hour webinar on the process. So the right of way is one of the biggest components that they don't want to award projects that they feel that you don't have the right of way secured. And that's part of the problem with the two projects you described down in the southern end. It's just right of way issues. And, until you get those hammered out, you won't even have an application being considered down there, because they're going to say, you got 20 different parcels, you got to negotiate right away. That's just not going to fit our timeframes.
I understand.
That is one area that I have a real concern over. I see more people walking on that side of the street to go from Malta Gardens. They probably don't even drive. I'm not sure, but I repeatedly see people walking that stretch, and they're always in the road because nothing else on the side. It's not safe for them, and they're always in the street pushing something or strollers, and to be walking on Route 9 and that quantity of traffic, there's no reason not to have sidewalks on that side. no question about it. So,
Our plans all call
I
for
favor
it, right? You know, the linkage studies going back into early 2000s, they show it. It's all part of our planning.
Yeah.
It's just a question of, for me
Yeah.
anyways, the number seems
Yeah.
disproportionately out of whack.
But it may not cost $500,000 anyway.
Well, you're gonna
so-
have to have a minimum project.
Right,
parameter. So
right.
what you do is you table it for the time being and look for other types of grant applications that you could apply for that are smaller dollars, do it in segments.
And for next year, you're talking about, Kevin?
Yeah, maybe next year, you know.
I would tell you, I wouldn't mind spending the $4,000 to be able to evaluate the feasibility of it
Okay,
and see whether the right of way is there, get a budget number for, for the construction. But committing today to do $500,000 there, I'm not
Okay.
prepared to do that.
I can go back to Chazen and say, okay, I want to change the scope of this project in which you're going to, come up with a preliminary estimate of what it would cost to do this, what the right of way is, and have a better ballpark from that. And, we might not be at this magnitude. It might be a smaller project, and we'll have the defined information that we could later on, apply for another grant
Right.
opportunity.
Right, it
Which
won't
we
be
know-
wasted $4,000 even if we don't apply for this particular TAP grant.
Right.
Okay, so if that's the sense, I mean, we'll vote on it next week, but if that's the sense of the board, then we'll contact Shazen and stuff and see what we can do.
Do we have any alternatives in the interim for that stretch through there, Roger? Is there anything that we could do in the meantime to make it safe for those folks walking from that area of town up to here?
you can
Nothing
put in a
really?
bike lane.
It's a
I-
state.
I mean,
state
Yeah, it's a
road.
state right of
Yeah.
way. They already have what is that, a 4-foot shoulder there, so. Got anything, Roger?
So it's basically a sidewalk or nothing then, pretty much.
Pretty much,
Don't do anything temporary at all.
one thing, I know we got a grant for bicycle, reflective, lights, right? Maybe there's a way that you could utilize that and specifically target that community with some reflective devices to assist them in their walking.
Yeah, it's tough. I think we've all seen, a young mother pushing a stroller, there.
They always take the shortest route.
Yeah.
Right, so they're going to be walking the wrong way on one of the trips. So, yeah. Okay, so we'll come back with some proposal next week. Thanks, Kevin. All right, next item on the agenda is the Millard Emig House, and we have both Kathy and Paul here today. And Joyce is also here. All right, terrific. Thank you all for coming. And Paul, are you with the rest of us that we're trying to ignore birthdays? Because I know you got one coming up in a day or two, right? Okay, so there are two options. One is to declare this, three. One is to not do anything. The second is to declare it a landmark, and the third is to put up a sign. I guess we can do, one of those three. We have a proposed letter to the landowner, and I think the landowners agree to what? The landmark or the sign or both? Okay, it's landmark including the sign. Yeah, yep. Okay, any questions
Well, yeah,
for?
can you give us a quick reason of why this is, I don't know, do we have something in here about this particular?
Yeah, Paul, Kathy's and Paul's memo should be in there.
I don't see it. What's it called? If you can just do a quick,
The house dates back probably to the 1840s and perhaps earlier, we don't know. It's been the home site of three very historic families in the town, four perhaps, depending on your point of view. that go, these families go back to the origin of the town. In 1802, when the town was founded, some of the members of the Millard family were elected to office in the town government. So that shows you they were here even before 1802. It's a very beautiful home. It's well preserved. The current homeowners have gone out of their way to restore the house and the other buildings on the property. Unfortunately, in many cases in town, homeowners of old historic properties do not want it to be designated. They resist that, and the town board accepts their feeling. We have a case here where we have homeowners who are supportive and in fact do want that designation. So I say strike while the iron is hot. Are there any questions?
I'm sorry that I missed your presentation at the senior meeting.
Hey,
I
Paul,
was out of town that day.
I have a question on it.
Yes, sir.
Does that designation restrict any of their adding on or
The
doing
designation,
any other?
to summarize it, I would say the designation means that if they wish to make alterations or changes to the exterior of their home, they have got to come in front of the Historic Preservation Review Commission and get permission to do so. So yes, that is a restriction. And that's the issue when you talk to homeowners about do they want or not wish to have that designation done. So this is a homeowner that's willing to accept that restriction, because in fact, they have come to us and gotten our advice on those issues as they've done their work. So they are accepting and very understanding of why the Historic Preservation Review Commission wishes to make the exterior of these buildings as authentic as we possibly can.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Looks like a great
Yeah.
candidate for it.
Yeah. excellent.
I believe it is.
Thanks, Paul.
Thanks.
And thanks, Kathy, and thanks, Joyce. Okay, the next item on the agenda is for next week will be the High Point tree restoration idea. You know, we all know on this board that we were confronted with a situation where there was no good answer, that we had a bunch of difficult consequences from the decisions that were made, and we struggled with, you know, how to do this. What the board decided to do was to remove the trees that were endangering the walkways, repair the walkways, and move forward in that way. It hurt to take down nice trees, and you know, understandably, many of the homeowners in there are upset about it. I totally get it. So we have an idea that we could set aside a pocket of money to, you know, reimburse the homeowners as to whom a tree was removed from their property for up to a maximum amount per tree, to put a tree in that conforms to, you know, whatever specifications are going to be necessary to safeguard the walkways. And that's a function of distance from the walkway and height of the tree that's planted. So, you know, this resolution would do that, set aside, say, $200 per tree that the landowners would have the option of putting on their property, and then give us the receipt and we would reimburse them at 100% up to the $200. So, you know, I just throw that out to the board to see if, you know, this is an idea that you want to move on next week.
I'm interested in seeing the town, you know, I have strong feelings and you know, we all did on that, and I'm not going to revisit those. I'm interested in seeing something be done for these folks. I mean, my impression is the trees there were, I don't know if they were 15, 20 years old, or maybe even older, 20. Yeah, so the trees were, you know, the trees were pretty well, I don't know if they were, you know, I don't know what the diameter was, but they were, you know, yeah, they were on their way. So I don't know what $200 will buy. I mean, it's probably going to be kind of a starter tree. you know, and I guess that's kind of the question is, before you fix the dollar amount, maybe the thought should be, what are we trying to provide for the homeowner?
You know, just, you know, it would provide some money, you know, whether it would reimburse them for the entire cost, it depends what kind of a tree they put in and how big it is, I suppose. You know, obviously they would have the option of putting in as big a tree as they want if they wanted to exceed the amount we'd reimburse, but it's something.
I think if you're gonna do it, I would do more. I mean,
Yeah.
I don't like to throw money away, but what I remember those trees is they were nice trees and they were fairly well established, and $200 isn't gonna get you too much. So
I guess that's what I don't know is what does the tree cost?
Depends on the tree. but-
What if we have the problem? What if we have the problem that we have now with the affecting the sidewalk years that down the line? What do we do then?
Well, this, you know, if we do it according to this regimen, you know, when that hopefully wouldn't happen because depending on the height of the tree, they'd be a sufficient distance from the walkway that they wouldn't heave up the walkway. You know, that would be the idea.
we'd
We
require.
hope that happens.
Yeah, we-
anyway.
yeah.
We'd require.
This
that
draft
condition,
requires it. Yeah.
Okay. This is taking an awful long time to resolve a solution. I hope it's done and over with.
Okay, so shall we put this on the agenda for next week?
Yeah, I'm gonna try
Think
to-
about it over the week at least.
Yeah. Try to look and see what a tree costs.
Now, hate to bring this up, but if we go through with the, I'm hoping they don't have to go back to the homeowners and vote on it and discuss it and push this out even further.
Well, no, this would just
that
be a
true?
program that if the town did, then they would take advantage of it or not. It's not as if,
Okay. I appreciate it.
okay, we'll think about it over the week, do a little more looking into it and have it on the agenda for next week. Okay, the next item on the agenda is the Farmland Protection Open Space Grant application. We heard from Michael before. And so this item would be to approve their requests, the dual requests.
Are we gonna talk about Cornthwaite? Because you and I talked about maybe trying to authorize the appraisal for the Cornthwaite property.
Yeah, that's a good point. I'm glad you remembered that, Cynthia. As I mentioned, when Michael was making his presentation, one of the things I like about this is that, you know, the town would be spending about 100,000, which is, you know, leaves a ton of money in the PDR program, you know, to look for other properties. One of them is the Cornthwaite property. And so the idea is to, you know, authorize an appraisal so that we can get some ideas as to, you know, whether that's something the town and Miles would like to go ahead with. So if the board, you know, is interested in that, then, you know, we'll put that in a resolution. We can vote on it next week.
I'd be interested in it.
Me too. So Miles is also interested in it. If he says he's interested, then I would be interested in putting it.
Okay, let's do that.
Is he, I can't see, he's in the shadow there. Is he shaking his head? He's interested in having us do an appraisal and continue forward?
I spoke with Miles today about it. He's on board.
Yes.
Thanks.
All right, we'll get that together. Okay, the next item is the Luther Forest Athletic Fields, the lighting project. And so we kind of have to look at that and decide which way we want to go on this. My recommendation, you know, it would be softball lights at 313,000, parking lot and pedestrian lights at 348, bleachers at 59, softball scoreboards at 108. Those are the items that were specified in the grant.
And you have the three-phase service electrical.
Oh, yeah,
right,
that's
in there
definite,
too?
definitely.
And those,
Yeah,
those things add up to what amount?
that would add up to 830,000.
Okay.
The SAM grant would cover 250. And then 580 would be in LFTC recreation mitigation fees, and that would leave in our balance in the recreation mitigation fund of 373,000 plus 288,000 that's used for community center debt service.
I would like to add the safety netting to that.
Instead of or in addition to?
Well, if we could do it instead of the scoreboards, but then I would say instead of the scoreboards, and hopefully that would be something that then the athletic association would be able to raise funds for, or Miss Scotty's or whoever raises funds. But I don't know, Kevin, is that possible? Can we do the lights?
You have to go back to.
We have to go back to get,
I would have to go back to DASNY.
Yeah.
I think first you might have, first have to go back to somebody in Warner and say that you would like to modify the grant application. Netting instead of the scoreboards, and that would start the process through to DASNY.
so that, I guess that's my question.
I'm not sure that DASNY would do anything without first consulting.
Right. I mean, I would think that the assemblywoman would be, I would think amenable to it. I did talk to her a little bit about the project itself. I didn't talk about this specifically, but are we going back to square one? Because if we're going back to square one for the whole thing, then I would just add them.
I don't know exactly where we would go within that process. Okay, their process is long and cumbersome to begin with. And I don't know exactly where we would be if we go back. You know, we're asking for a amendment. So I don't even have an approved agreement yet. And I started over 9 months ago trying to get this finalized.
So if it isn't approved yet, I would think it's more of a streamlined process then.
Who knows?
Darren, the spreadsheet that you sent us here, which I've got up in front of me, these numbers are, what do they represent? These are athletes playing softball.
Yeah.
So this doesn't include the soccer. These.
Oh, yeah, yes.
These are the total softball numbers.
I thought it was split up.
So there's 65 Malta athletes that are playing softball.
Well, I think what we got from Patty just recently was something in the neighborhood of 40% Malta residents in softball,
I thought it was more than that.
or 50.
Because this shows 65 of 170.
I'm not sure what you're looking at, John. I just remember getting the email from Patty.
You emailed us a spreadsheet,
Yeah.
which is in our town.
Was this
board folder.
recently, just recently?
Yeah, there's a spreadsheet in the town
Yes.
board folder.
Are you talking about the registration summary?
Oh, yeah, okay, this is the one I had.
Yeah. Right, so roughly 40%, but by far the vast majority, or not the vast majority,
Plurality.
of all of the other towns, most of them are, the biggest numbers from Malta. I guess I don't know how to say that.
I'm
40%, but there's only, the town of Boston has 95 participants. Malta has 252. Milton is the next closest. They have 140.
Well, that's not in 1 year. That's a total.
That's the
over-
grand total, right? I'm looking at the grand total.
Yeah, the average per year, you'd have to divide that by 4, right?
I don't think 2020 fall rec is, I don't think those are fair numbers because of the pandemic. So both the 2020 numbers,
2020 fall rec isn't in there.
2020 fall. rec
2020
is in
fall
there.
rec. This is the third column.
So if we just look at spring,
Says
we just look at
2020 spring rec.
2021 spring registrations
I'm
this
looking
year.
at the spreadsheet that says 2020 spring rec in the third
I'll give
column.
this to John and you can give this back to Jim.
Am I? This is different than that? Because mine says spring rec. Oh, I'm sorry, the second column of numbers. Okay, thanks. All right, beg your pardon. Thank you, Mary.
Then, so if we just look at the spring rec, we've got 65 Malta residents. You know, the next biggest one is 40 at the town of Milton, and then 29 in the town of Ballston, and the rest of them are nominal. Stillwater.
And I'm gonna stand by my words about my belief in the importance of team athletics for young people, but to spend $800,000 to $1 million for 65 Malta athletes, it's not justified.
It's a lot of money. There is no question about that. But I think there's better areas. We have parks in this town that are still on phase one. They haven't been touched in years. So to address a problem that wasn't even in the plan, that doesn't have adequate parking for a large state event that we want to asphalt, is really tough to justify, I think.
I see it more as making an investment in an amenity that we already have. I think it's a facility that probably is used by more people than we're seeing on this little number.
How do we know?
I don't
These are
know.
the numbers that came from the athletic association. I mean, I don't mean to be rude or anything, but I want to keep working on this. I know it's awkward with the grant. I want to keep having, if we need to have another workshop where we sit down with the architect and engineer again and work further on it to see what can be done. But I just, even if you're talking about the higher numbers, 76 or 77 athletes, to spend that kind of money is just, I'm just very uncomfortable with it.
I mean, those are fields that are used constantly by a large number of groups and they're rented, so there's money. We have another group here that wants to join the MAA and be able to use that facility. So like I say, I see it as making an investment in something we already own. We already talked about how it could be opened up to other user groups. Adults could be using the softball fields at night.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking of also. I mean, and one of the things I would hope for is that eventually there would be lights in the soccer field too. And, maybe we could get some grant or private investment in that aspect of it. And I just know that there's, interest in using athletic fields at night. It's fun. It's great. People like it. I see it in other municipalities down in Albany, for example.
Maybe could use it for other outdoor activities. I mean, outdoor evening concerts or something like that.
I agree, Darren, with the idea of getting night use, but the number we were given, for soccer, the total registration number is over 300. That's not quite twice what it is in softball, and yet we're talking about spending hundreds of thousands, if not $1 million, on softball. So it just strikes me as, and I respect what's being said, but it strikes me as being really kind of out of balance with, where the use is by people of the community and where the demand is, in our community. The fields are great. Don't dispute that for a minute. It's great that Global Foundries invested heavily for us to have them. We're very fortunate to have them. I think we do need to improve them and provide greater access. But I don't think this is a good fit for what our needs are, respectfully.
Yeah, no, I understand. These are good points. One of the realities we're faced with is that, we don't do this and we lose the 250K. And so the question is, do we do this or do we, do we use the rest of the money for something else in our rec department? This is all recreation funds, so it's not as if we could use it for something else. And so, yeah, you kind of have to make that judgment that not going with this walks away from that 250, which can be a problem too. And walking away from a grant that was given to us, with the whatever kind of consequences that has. So, yeah, I mean, I see both sides of it.
What's our Parks and Rec director?
I'm thinking to address, maybe we should ask Ms. Scotty, like say, take time with this, but ask Ms. Scotty to do a more formal presentation of how they're gonna use the lights. I mean, they spoke generally, kind of nail down how they're gonna build up their program to use the lights. You mentioned adult week, but they didn't really touch on that. Maybe going down and seeing how they're actually gonna use the lights. And if it's gonna ask them for their forecast, but
How does the board feel about that?
I still want to have some sort of workshop or meeting where everybody's sitting at the table at the same time, where we have all the members of the MAA and us. I mean, we haven't gotten a whole lot of information from them. I think we need to
I'm happy to
get
do that
everybody in the
again.
same room.
It's important.
Yeah.
I believe in it. It's important. And I think it's worth making the further effort to see if there's something that is more in balance.
So we don't have a deadline as to
What do
when
you
we
think,
have to
Greg? I
get
mean,
the money
is
from.
that your sense too, that you'd like to have another meeting on this and flesh it out a little bit more?
I'd like the workshop. Yeah.
Kevin, is that going to run us into problems with deadlines?
We have no signed agreement with it yet.
Okay, let's do that. We'll work on that, although I dread trying to
I was
schedule
gonna say,
another
get
workshop.
Roseanne to
It's like
schedule it.
the worst thing in the world to schedule a workshop meeting.
Well, you know what, even if it's not, so if we don't have any huge deadline, if it waits until September, I mean,
Yeah.
Does it,
September's fine if we talk, say a year from now, say we might have some ground for a month or so.
right, I mean, I'm saying it's tough to schedule stuff in the summer, so.
Well, or else maybe we could, pair it with one of our budget discussions,
I would,
after.
I think you want to dedicate the time. So we all, feel that we've gotten all the information we need and there's been a good exchange and
because I still want to understand more about. We never got really any clear answers about, they buy in to be part of the organization, and then do they pay to use the fields themselves, or, what's their rental structure? And again, like I say, we have another group in town that would like to be part of the board of directors.
Oh, what is that, Alyssa? The rental structure. Oh, rental structure. You're talking about what they charge other people. Oh,
right.
Well, we know what the rental rate of the field is for like an outside organization, but in their budget and their financing, they're not showing like Scotty's paying yearly fees. to
Right.
MAA. It's written vaguely in their bylaws, that there's supposed to be a fee, but it was never stated, and that hasn't really shown up in their. It was a comment that was made last year at budget time.
And I mean, I don't want to govern them with a heavy hand, because they are a group of volunteers. So, we need to be mindful of that, that they're volunteers but still, I think we need better answers, because there is money involved.
Okay, we'll get together another meeting and we'll contact MAA, Ms. Scotty's, and everybody involved over there, and we'll hash it out.
Thank you.
Okay, Veterans Program, we have a little money coming to us, all towns from the county to be used for veterans. And, came up with the idea of, possibly making amounts available to veterans, their kids, grandkids, for educational reimbursement. It's not a huge amount of money, but it's some, and we could, ask for repurposing of part of the Global Foundries Multi-Foundation money, to add to that. So it's just an idea to toss out to the board and see, what you think.
I'm assuming the Veterans Committee supports this.
I did speak with Dave Wallingford, he
That's good enough for me.
Yeah, me too.
Yep.
Okay, the next item on the agenda is the PDD amendment from Scannell. The application.
Sorry. On your agenda, back on H, you had 2 copies.
Oh, memorial plaques. I
Oh.
forgot about that. Thank you, Kevin. Tom has proposed, LFTC EDC is proposing that we have 2 memorial plaques, stationed at Luther Forest Athletic Fields, honoring Ken Green and Senator Bruno for their huge amount of work in getting together, the whole campus and, what it's developed into. And Tom, you're still here. Yeah, what we looked at is, stones with possible benches with a plaque on each one at either side of the parking lot, one close to soccer and one close to softball. It seems like we'd have to think about that in conjunction with whatever the board decides to do in terms of the lighting project. But, that's also something that it wouldn't cost us any money. This is LFTC EDC. But it was just an idea that we needed the board's input on.
I think it's a great idea. I mean, those folks, Ken Green in particular, you got to give the guy credit because, to the notion that Malta would ever have this chip fab plant here, somebody could rightfully have questioned his sanity, when he was proposing this, and he never let go of it. And wouldn't he, the dream came true. So he, in particular, I didn't know him that well, but is, reported to be the moving force behind this thing happening. So I think it's appropriate recognition of his work and his commitment to fulfill a dream.
Okay, so yeah, I think we like the idea, Tom, and we have to see how that fits in next time we talk about where we're going with this project. Sure. Thank you, Tom.
Thank you.
Okay, now moving on to the Scannell. Obviously, we've had that application to amend the PDD over at the campus to provide for the warehouses, distribution centers. Global Foundries is objecting to that PDD application. We have some legal issues that have been, thrown into the mix. It was presented to the planning board. Our planning board unanimously made a recommendation that the application be denied. Under our existing code, that gives this board the option of dismissing the application without further process. And it also results in a 4/5 supermajority. Scannell has objected to certain legalities with the planning board determination. Those legal issues haven't been completely sorted out yet, but we're going to have a motion. We're going to have a resolution proposed to the board to, use the power that the code gives the board and dismiss the application. And I think that resolution we have a draft of it, and it's going to be submitted next week to the board. We've listened to all of the input on this. It's a difficult situation. Irrespective of how these legal issues pan out on the planning board's recommendation, there's no question in my mind, and I think with the board, that the planning board's determination and recommendation is entitled to great weight. Whether these provisions apply or because of legal reasons don't. I know I, for one, am going to give it great weight, even if it's not acted on and the application dismissed right now. So I think that, dismissing it right now, before we get these legal issues sorted out and before we have the traffic study, et cetera, is premature. But I also think that the planning board's recommendation, deserves careful consideration and great weight. So that's how I see it.
What the audience doesn't know is that Councilman Warner and myself have moved and seconded a resolution to deny the application as is on the basis of the planning board recommendation. And I think that there's probably very little that I could say that wasn't quite eloquently said by former Councilman Peter Klotz. I like to, think as a fancy pants lawyer, I've got a way to express myself, but I thought he articulated very clearly and succinctly how this should be viewed. I tell people a lot that modern history started when I was born in 1962. And that at that particular juncture, the state of New York had roughly 1.8 million manufacturing jobs. The last time I checked, it was under 500,000. So in my lifetime, New York State has shed 1.3 roughly million manufacturing jobs. And it's devastated upstate communities disproportionately. And I've seen this in my short lifetime. I was born in Buffalo, and Bethlehem Steel gone, GM devastated. I lived in Syracuse for a while, Carrier Corporation gone. I lived in Potsdam, right next to Messina, where you had two aluminum plants and GM. I think there's the aluminum plants each had 2 pot lines, employed thousands of people. GM's gone. One of the aluminum companies gone. There's 1 pot line last time I lived. When I lived before I came here in Jefferson County, where Watertown was once the richest small city in the country on the basis of the paper industry. There's barely anything left of the paper industry in that county anymore, and in this state. So in my lifetime, I've watched New York hemorrhage manufacturing jobs. And those are the jobs that can actually, that provide a living wage for families. So when I moved down here, really not planning to, and came to this town, all of a sudden, within a year, Global Foundries is announced its reality. And here we are today, 12 years later, and they've got 3,000 people making roughly $90,000 a year. So my wisdom, which sometimes fails me, but what my instincts are that when that company and the Secretary of Commerce of the United States of America and the majority leader of the Senate are up here, and the CEO of this company are up here saying, we're going to spend $1 billion to put more equipment in our existing plant. We're going to build another plant. I don't want to have there be a single moment where they have to be concerned with their ability to go forward with those additional jobs. We were all concerned initially that they wouldn't necessarily be here on a long-term basis. That was a concern that a lot of people expressed in the community, that they're here and who knows, they'll be gone soon. But these latest developments and what's happened with technology and what you're seeing with changes in federal policy, where we're only producing 12% of the chips in this country, and our federal leaders finally realized that that's jeopardizing our national security and our economy. All these things, to me, they paint a picture of Global Foundries being here for a long time and bigger than they are. To jeopardize that over Skanel, who I don't feel has been a good faith bargaining partner this far in the application process, I think is a serious mistake. I don't think our community can afford to make that mistake. I think we dispense with any legal issues about a 4/5 vote by simply denying the application. which I believe we have the power to do at any time. And my own view is that when I act to deny a zoning application, I mean, I'm a lawyer. I've practiced municipal and civil rights law over the years. I'm not an expert, but my understanding is that when I act to do that, it's a legislative act for which I have complete immunity. The town can deny this application regardless of this 4/5 voting issue. And I suggest that we do it because I do not believe that it's where our future should be in this town.
Well said, John. Thank you. Very well done.
Any other comments?
Well, I agree with a lot of what John says. I'm very skeptical about whether or not this is a reasonable fit, for the town of Malta. There are the issues of the comp plan, which is the basis for the denial of the planning board's, negative recommendation. And like Darren says, I think that we need to take the planning board's negative recommendation very, very seriously. It's probably, the number one weighted thing that in my mind, but I still feel like it might be premature. I mean, we asked them for a traffic study that had a very wide scope. I don't think that by at least letting Stenell have some sort of response that we're jeopardizing Global Foundries. I certainly don't want to jeopardize a second fab. I mean, there's no doubt in my mind that that's a good quality investment. But I still, like Darren says, I feel that it's premature to, at this stage, not at least let them have some sort of response before we just flat out deny it.
Thanks, Cynthia. And yeah, I completely agree also that we do not want to jeopardize 8.2. We've been waiting around for a long time. We are almost at the cusp of this happening as long as the House, adopts that bill that the Senate passed. So, I certainly don't want to jeopardize that.
But there are serious concerns of mine about the project as a whole, and there have been, from the beginning, serious concerns.
I guess my question would be, under what circumstances would you approve it then?
I guess that's a good question, actually.
I mean, like I've said from the beginning, I can't answer that without seeing a traffic study. I mean, that's one of the biggest questions that I would have. All of the the studies that were done early on when the plant was built, talked about what would have to be done if 8.2 came about. And, I wouldn't want to put Global Foundries in a worse situation than was anticipated, by those environmental impact studies, specifically the 6 intersections that they were talking about.
I'm not willing to allocate trips that were previously allocated in the PDD for the 8.2 to Scanell. The trips that they generate would have to be above and beyond the ones that we've already established would be the trips that are allocated to Global when the PDD was reviewed back in whenever 2015, and they've got intersections that they've already committed to improving.
And Scanell also said that they would not consider 11A exit. Right?
I don't know what the answer to that is, Craig.
I'm pretty sure they said that.
I mean, I don't think 11A is under serious consideration under any circumstances, but
There's a couple of thoughts. I find that my ability to convince members of this board on any issue is barely measurable anymore. But I'm going to make one last attempt here. The question I would have is first a point, and that is that the planning board recommendation isn't based strictly on traffic. They recite unanimously in their decision, they recite a number of other factors besides traffic. And The other question I think that warrants consideration is that if we're prepared to make all these changes to accommodate, and they're really market changes that they have asked us to consider, how can we in the next breath hold anyone in that tech campus, Global Foundry or anyone else, to the existing requirements that are there? If we're going to throw things wide open, or as wide open as Scanel is asking us to do for them, why wouldn't we do the same for Global Foundries on their next project and everyone else that comes in after them? And where does that leave us? I think that's a question worth considering.
I also think that we gotta respect the planning committee that we put in there and gave our faith into them. They researched it, they thought about it carefully. And to be honest, there is not one person that has contacted me that favors the size of that project. Not one. I get weekly questions about it. Where does it stand? What's going on? As a matter of fact, when I go home tonight, I got to answer them. They constantly monitor it because they're very concerned, especially down in Maltaville and in the forest. They're very concerned. And in Avondale. It's right in their backyards. All that traffic. You don't put 5 full-sized footprint warehouses and say we're not going to impact the traffic that much. You're talking about houses, families that grew up here that are sitting out here now, brought their family up here for 30, 15 years. And some of these trailer trucks are going to go right by every one of these houses every single day, 24/7.
I will say this, John, you did ask a question that I'm going to spend the next week pondering. And I'll make my decision about how to vote on this resolution and that is under what circumstances would I allow this to go forward? So I think that was a good question. I'm going to think long and hard on that.
I don't think the question is approval as it's contemplated right now or no. I mean, it could well be that, the application is substantially modified and it might change the inquiry.
I do know the world has changed. I also grew up in Western New York in a manufacturing town that now is virtually dead because both of the manufacturing plants that supported the community, died. But the way the world also has changed. Before the pandemic, I never ordered anything online. Now pretty much everything comes to my house in an Amazon truck. Not everything. I still kind of go out. So, I think there's got to be some way for that too.
Yeah, there are, huge demands for that.
Yeah.
Why you would, and there's a lot of land not that far away available to do it in. Why you would do that? 2 miles off the interstate, maybe closer to 3 miles off the interstate, through the middle of a town, in the middle of a tech campus, where you would have to have these types of impacts. It doesn't make sense to me. And I'm not so sure. I mean, Scanel is, looking at multiple sites in the capital region. We saw media where they're looking to twin the build they did down in Skodak. There are places that are a better fit than in the middle of our tech campus, driving right through, our biggest residential area in town in Luther Forest. Anyway, enough said.
Okay, any other comments on this? All right, thank you. The next item on the agenda is 407 Malta Avenue property. Very interesting history here. In fact, Paul, you're here. I mean, this is really interesting, Paul. I mean, this is a plot of land that the Village of Ballston Spa owns. In 1905, the village was ordered to remove sewage. They acquired this property basically through eminent domain or whatever it was then. They were removing, sewage from the Cateros. It was owned by Thelma Gray and somebody named Morrison. It was sold to the village by court process for what seems to be fair price in today's dollars. The village owns it. The village's maintenance garage is dilapidated, falling apart. They need to have a new one, and they would like to put it there. And so it is now LC. Obviously, this board wants to keep land that's LC. But the village has raised the possibility of, allowing it to put its maintenance garage there.
I don't support it. I don't mean to be dismissive of it, but, and I appreciate the tough spot that the village is in, and I generally support intermunicipal, cooperation, but I don't think this makes sense for our town for the reasons that you said, Darren.
Darren, at our last Oats meeting, which we had just a week or so ago, I brought this up. And it was unanimous across the board with Oats that we were not supportive of anything happening on that property for obvious reasons, proximity to the Cateros, what was primary, but there are others as well. So we do not support it at all.
Greg or Cynthia, do you have an idea about this?
I mean, I would like to at least talk to the village about it and look at the property and see, exactly where, where they want to, build their highway garage. As I understand it, there is part of the property that is at a higher elevation. And I mean, I guess I don't want to dismiss it just out of hand without some more information about the property and what they actually intend to do with it. And I think, they're an adjacent municipality that we should at least make an effort to try to.
Well, it is
cooperate with.
LC.
It is LC, and I
You're aware of
understand
that. You're
Yep.
aware of how close it is to the Cateros.
Oh, yep,
That
yep,
area is very sensitive.
yep. I've looked at it on the map.
I don't understand why we would want to entertain the idea of putting anything in there myself,
Yeah.
especially in lieu of, again, we had yet another committee with a unanimous decision not to do something. It begs the question, I'm sorry, after listening to the last conversation, we have committees that we rely so heavily on in this town. Zoning, planning, Oats. Why do we do that? If we're not going to listen to what these folks are saying and rely on their judgment, we're giving them the opportunity to exercise their judgment. And I get it. I understand that the final blessing, so to speak, comes from this board. But I'm very concerned as of late with the signal that we're sending to our volunteer committee members. And this is just one other case.
I'm not saying I'm dismissing what the Oats Committee says. We haven't really taken the time to evaluate exactly what they want to do, and I think we should at least look at it some more.
Something that, and no disrespect towards Cynthia's position, something that really jumps out at me in terms of, a yellow or red light on this is that Malta Ave traffic is, challenging as it is. It's an east-west corridor. It does get heavily traveled because you're running up to Old Post Road that way. And to introduce, municipal equipment moving in and out of that site doesn't make sense to me to do that.
Yeah, and there are houses to the west of that driveway in Malta, on Malta Avenue, in front of which the trucks would be, trafficking. So, yeah,
So-
that's an issue that we were looking at also on this.
So
So
Darren, do you not support moving forward? with
I
this?
don't, no, I think I'd like to hear more from the village. I wouldn't rule it out now. I think it's probably not likely,
Yeah.
that, the town is going to go along with it, but, I wouldn't want to just, stop it right now.
I agree, like before, changing anything from LC is, painful, but like I said, I think we should at least hear what they have to say.
I mean, we'd have to talk to, Steve about, obviously it was LC long after it was used for this sewage dump kind of thing. So I don't know if there's any legal implications of, rezoning it LC with that use having been in there. I have no
Are
idea.
they using it now?
Yeah, they're using it for something. I don't know what's in there.
Yeah, I mean, there are certainly some legal questions about the status of their prior use, but I think the other thing that's hard for the board to really go any further on is, I know they're an adjoining municipality and we're certainly interested in municipal cooperation, but normally you'd have some form of presentation to hash this out, to give you guys more information. So you're kind of reaching in the dark about it. So putting aside the legal questions, I would say anybody else that wanted to put an application in, we'd either want to see the whole application or at least have them present something to the board. Legally, it's a really unique parcel. It was granted by court order, which I guess was the equivalent to possibly condemnation proceedings for, to clean up sewage. Clearly, that's not ongoing now, and to our knowledge, hasn't been for a long time. And it's LC. So the same challenges that we face as a board with rezoning any LC project, and we've had a lot of pressure on those. This would also really be something I think the board should consider, just because they're a joining municipality. We've said no or have been not favorable to other projects that want to, and there's a lot of pressure to, undo the LC category. So legally, I think there'd be some more homework, but practically, I think, if you are going to consider it, you should at least have them do the steps that any other applicant would do.
Oh, yeah, definitely. This was just a temperature taking, and Craig, I don't know how you feel about it, but do you have a firm view on it?
More info on it, actually, Darren.
Okay, so what I propose to do is to, communicate with the village and just tell them that, there are problems with this for the reasons we mentioned, and that, we see it as something of an uphill fight. But the board is willing to look at a detailed kind of proposal of what they would do and how they would deal with stormwater issues with the impervious pavement and all that kind of stuff. So, and if they are in a big enough jam after we give them that kind of difficult scenario to come forward, then they can put together a detailed plan and the board can take another look at it. Does that sound okay? Okay. Okay, the next item on the agenda is to appoint a deputy animal control officer. We all know that Brownie is our sole animal control officer now. When he goes on vacation or something like that, it's kind of difficult to get coverage. We have a young lady, Carly Russell, who, has tremendous qualifications in terms of, she works now at the animal shelter. She's got degrees in animal related fields and animal care. She seems like a perfect selection to fill in when Brownie can't. So yeah, we're going to ask the board to approve the appointment of her as deputy animal control officer.
Okay.
The next is an appraisal class for Jessa. This is just part of the continuing education that, so many people in our town have to do, and this is one of them that's going to be in Delaware County.
Okay with me.
And we'll probably have some budget transfers next week, right?
Yeah, there'll be two budget transfers. One will be to provide for additional revenues and expenses related to the escrow professional fees. For projects that are ongoing, residential or commercial projects. That will be one, and then Roger, that for budget transfer to provide for additional highway improvements, finish stuff, especially if I want anything extended, but finished up Country Knolls, we're looking to pave down there this year, to get it all buttoned up. We're looking to transfer $80,000 from highway improvements and general repairs.
Okay.
That
sounds
is good news.
Good, very good.
Yeah.
Great. Okay, any other business? Any comments or questions from town residents? Yes.
The grant covers, the things that the grant covers, is that chiseled in stone, that's something that all those items have to be addressed.
I wouldn't quite say it's chiseled in stone, Ted, but it's certainly the lights are. Definitely.
I'm in favor, if I say there, that I just, it's a theory of mine there is that, most of us there and ask for a thing that don't have, go about doing something. Stages. So, in theory, looking at the needs and the wants of Miss Scotty's and the other members that wish to play soccer as well as the softball, is where to the $250 promised by Assemblyman Kerry, and looks at saying, okay, let's do this in stages. Is there a possibility of next year, perhaps Assemblyman Kerry would like to, or step up, bring some money to Malta, and with another grant, to do another piece, do it in segments and not always in one big plan.
So, yeah, and we thought about that, in terms of just doing the lights, and we could do that, but, we'd have problem using them, because of the danger of getting to your car afterwards. So that's what we were thinking about, and so the lights for the parking lot is a big number, and those two together, almost eat up almost the whole 860K. So we definitely thought about that. So we could put the lights in, but I think we might not be able to turn them on until we have lights in the parking lot. I'm not sure. Woody. Judge Slow.
No.
No, one.
Because they got to bring in the three
phase.
phase on it also. When I've been thinking about this whole thing, I've inquired into other states that have adequate lit softball fields, and a lot of them told me that a lot of it was handled through people that actually played there. They did a lot of fundraisers and had contractors help them out. And also, it wasn't any $1 million venture that happened overnight. It was a gradual thing with the community, not just the town. And it just, I'm shocked at this one cost to happen and have it put on the backs of the taxpayers in town here.
Just a minor correction. It's not just the town. It's 250K
Not
from
just
a
the
grant.
town,
Yeah.
But a handful of it is for a small amount of people. And I think there's other ways to actually get there going forward. That's
Okay.
just my thoughts.
piece it out. I mean, with it. A lot of times they say that if you work at the park, still on phase one. They have been approved in 20 years. It seems to get come up, and all of a sudden it goes to the wayside. But with an actual commitment, that's what things following through on the yearly phases, or even every other year as far as the grant from the assemblywoman or whoever making their future. This is something that I look at is try to break it down a little bit. Big chunk of money.
Yep, it is.
It is.
Remember, it's all recreation money. It's not as if we could use this and, you know. Yeah.
And in the future, there'll be additional recreation money coming in. Of course, there'll be recreation money coming in at that 8.2. There'll be more funds on coming available. I just look at it where it's surely, at least I want to feel that there's more of a bang for a buck that we're getting and that sort of thing. For 250,000. I like those grants that are 8%. I mean, that's something that the grant that I can agree with, and say even 50%. I'll give you a budget. Listen, we all knew that we wanted to our town to really use expansion of the salt shed, and salt shed turned into a lights on wall. That's because it's fluff, it pays more attention to the assembly. I don't call it politics, call it whatever you want, but come up with more money. This assembly. That's nice. The $250 will come out, and that's just very around that cheap.
Okay, thanks, Ted. Tim. We'll get to you, Miles.
One, I thought it was a very positive thing about Hudson Valley Community College and building on. I think that's something the community definitely needs and is fantastic. With regards to the lights in the ball field, I mean, that's a lot of money, taxpayer money. I don't care if you get a grant from the assemblywoman, wherever, it's taxpayer money. And that's a small amount of people in Malta. Small group, and it looks like it's strictly going to be softball players at this point. The other thing is lights. How often can you use the lights? How many months out of the year? What do you do in the middle of winter? Still have to pay for them, and nobody will be using them. I mean, I think that that's a lot of money for a small amount of people who within our town. I don't care if they come up with 100. It's still a lot of money for. I guess that's it.
Oh, thank you, Tim. Kathy, I think you had your hands up before, Miles, so.
I do this, I can see all your faces. Just a couple quick thoughts. With Scanell, with any developer, I guess when you say go get more information, go spend money to do something, when there's no good result of that, I think that's very difficult to ask developers. I know it's done in the past, and then they've been shut down. If there's no way they're gonna go forward, I think it's difficult to have. Aren't mobile logistics, if in Malta has been there for a while, they were just saying they have 60 acres available for warehouse. So Oxbow Ridge Road, that just seems to make more sense to me. That's just me. And I want to thank John and all of you for recognizing the time and effort it takes for volunteers on committees and boards to make these decisions. I know on HPRC, even Community Day, and on a few committees, it's not a small task. We're asking them to do. When they give a recommendation, having that question, it's just very difficult for me. So I know you appreciate the board. That's my
Thanks, Kathy. Miles.
Regarding 407 Malta Avenue zoning request, I commend the board for going to look at it. I also recommend that they go look at the existing facility the village has and ask if that's the quality project we want in Malta.
Their current maintenance garage.
Good point.
Previous president had a good description of it.
Thanks, Miles.
That is.
I don't wanna-
Anyone else? Mike?
Good evening, everyone. First, I want to thank Kathy for your invitation to the seniors group. I joined.
All right. Wait a minute. You don't qualify, do you,
Yeah, I
Mike?
do. I qualify. John, you qualified, you didn't join yet? Okay.
I refuse to surrender. I'm not gonna
And Cynthia,
surrender.
you missed a good presentation by
I
Paul.
know. I
like
was sorry to
always.
miss it. They're always interesting.
So I'm out here, giving out kudos right now. Roger, your team did a great job on my street, new signs. They look really good. But, the reason why I came up today was to talk about, safety, was about, road safety. Now, I think it might be a little bit late, but I think the town should do a public announcement regarding roundabout safety, road safety. Now it's July, coming up to August, me coming up to, school starts shortly. But we're getting a lot more traffic, it just seems like, and people are really driving erratic around the roundabouts. One guy a couple of weeks ago was driving, he's gonna make a right turn on the northbound lane of 87, so. Maybe a public announcement. But you mentioned about the 80%, okay, for 500,000. I think it's worth it to pursue that for sidewalks, okay? The people that walk on the sidewalks are the same people that work at Price Chopper, Dunkin' Donuts, the Ugly Rooster, okay? Those are people that are in the community, there's providing a service to us. They're going to work at 4 or 5 o'clock in the morning, and they need a safe way of getting to work. They don't have vehicles, a lot of them. Well, the ones that are walking probably don't have vehicles. So that's why they're walking. So I would wish that you take that in more of consideration and think about the people that don't have vehicles so that they can get to work safely.
Got it. Okay. Thank you, Mike.
Thanks, Mike.
Any other comments from town residents?
Darren, if there aren't, just a couple things, I don't want to. One is, I know there was some evaluation being done on Silver Beach and corner lots. Just a reminder, I had the impression that we might get some recommendations on that. I was hoping we might hear about that soon. And the last thing was, I had, going door to door is, as some in this room know, it's an interesting process. And this last weekend, I was out and I happened up on a door of a condo, and as I approached, I could hear somebody playing drums in there, really, going crazy on drums, right near the front window. And in this condo, and so I walked up and they came to the door, and it was kind of unexpected because it was a woman who was probably not too much younger than me, and she was just rocking out on these drums, and she was very friendly, and so we started a conversation, and she wanted, out of the blue, she wanted to talk about water and sewer. And I said, wouldn't you know, I agreed with her a lot, which you tend to do when you're trying to talk people into voting for it. But I said, wouldn't you know, we've got a study that's just about done. And sure enough, tonight on my desk, the Bound study showed up here. So I'm glad to have this. And I know a lot of it is due to the work of and belief in Councilman Warner and the importance of doing this. And hopefully, it's probably going to take many years before stuff like this is realized, but it's good to have this report in our hands.
Are you
So that's
taking
it.
that as an omen, John?
What?
The water that you were just talking about it and the report appeared on your desk?
I don't know.
Could be. Okay, I'm going to ask for an executive session on a very minor point. I can basically assure everyone that when we come back into session, we're not going to be discussing anything. We're just going to be adjourning. We have a very minor personnel. I'll ask to adjourn to executive session on a personnel issue. I move to
Is it
to
employment,
adjourn into, yes.
an employment matter?
Yeah, not a new employment. It's a personnel issue on an employment matter. Yeah,
Concerning an employee?
yeah,
Okay,
a specific employee.
I moved that we go into executive session.
Second.